Past the Game Challenge is a series created by Blackthornprod, where a group of developers attempt to make a game without communicating. And I was kindly asked to participate twice. So here's a more unabridged account of my experience. Blackthornprod is a very special channel to me, as it's one of my biggest inspirations and learning tools when starting game development. So when I received an email from the team asking me to participate, I just about had a heart attack.
It's beautiful. I've looked at this for 5 hours now.
The first time I had a smaller and brief segment with a very limited amount of time, but it was part of a much larger project. And the second time was a lot smaller, but I had a much larger and more prominent role with a lot more time allocated. So it's time to dive in and do an extra double devlog about these amazing projects that I got to work on. So starting with the first project, it turned out to be a gigantic challenge where 100 devs are meant to be working on one project. I had no idea where I was placed or how far along the game was, but I only had 3 hours to do it over a couple of days, which I did in just one sitting. So I got cracking and checked out what the project was. To the shock and horror of my 2D developer eyes, it was a 3D project, so I sat and thought until the next day before starting. Instead of wasting my 3 hours reverse engineering and learning what all the code does, I just got straight into updating most of the UI elements that were missing. The game had this sort of boomer shooter aesthetic going on, mainly with 2D pixel art sprites and UI, except for this hand which just felt a little out of place when I first saw it. But pixel art is mainly what I know anyways, so I started by drawing this hand to match as a mana bar to replicate what this heart is doing that I thought was pretty neat. But it didn't come out as cool as I was hoping it would, but it's there now, so moving on to this sort of upgrade screen. When you gain enough XP, you get to choose another spell. The UI for this still had placeholder art, so I updated it to match the rest of the game with this tablet rune style and these new symbols. I then used the style I created to update the remaining UI to be more consistent, including the XP bar. But back to the upgrade screen again. I actually found it super annoying that it would pause in the middle of gameplay when you were not expecting it, breaking the flow of combat. I wanted to make it so you could prompt it with a single key when you were ready to upgrade. But I ran out of time to study the mechanics, so I just left it. And instead, I found these trees in some of the other levels and pasted them around just to add to the environment a bit more with my last 15 minutes that I had left. And after my time was up, I bundled it up and sent it back with a short 20-second clip of what I did. So to my surprise again, about a month and a bit later they wanted me back. But this time it was for a more prominent section in their more typical series with a lot less devs than 100. And I was set to be the second dev on the project with 4 days to work on it as much as I wanted. But this time, there was a fun little gimmick to go along with it. Alright, so I only get one chance at spinning this wheel apparently. That went for a while. Add gambling. So I haven't opened the project yet, so I'm gonna do that and then see how I can implement this. Alright, so I've just opened the project and there's practically nothing here. I'm getting like real Subnautica vibes right now. And it's just swimming around in an ocean of green, and when I go above the water I'm still swimming. So there's a lot that I can do with nothing, I think. At first I didn't quite know how I wanted to implement gambling, but the game was essentially almost a blank slate to do with whatever I wanted. And the game was potentially about diving and the deep ocean, which you can associate gambling with risk. While I sat with the theme in the back of my mind trying to think of ideas, I started to get things rolling and adjust myself to 3D again with just some simple tweaks. Game needed a way to detect if the player is above the water or not, so I added an object and a trigger to the player around where their eyes would be, so I could create another trigger essentially where the whole water area would cover. And now when the player moves the camera above the water, we're able to detect if the player is swimming or not. So we then can disable this green effect. I actually tried making it so that the player couldn't swim above the water and they would just nicely float on top, but I couldn't figure it out in an efficient manner, so now they just float away like this. So we'll leave that for someone else to figure out instead. But now with the trigger for the water, we can implement the oxygen system, which is just a fairly generic idea at this point, and I did it just because I really like Subnautica a lot.
One directive, to keep you alive.
I ended up tweaking the values for it throughout the entire development just to get it right. I created this little temporary UI that depletes over time, which I hope someone figures out that it's temporary and makes better and doesn't just leave this here. But now that you can see it's depleted, I made it so that once it hits 0, you'll have a good few seconds before you actually die, where it slowly fades out and the player starts choking. If they manage to surface within the fade out period, they're able to save themselves with this big, deep breath of air. If they fail to reach the top in time, they'll just choke to death. So the first actual gambling idea that popped into my head was that there were other oxygen tanks that you could switch out when you were low instead of resurfacing, and giving you a chance to go further and deeper. But also, there's a slight chance that the one you're picking up could be empty, and you would have to struggle to swap it back to the one you had before. And with this done, it also created the interaction system for future objects. So I don't know how to spawn these in an effective way in a 3D environment randomly, especially when the terrain looks like this, so I sort of just copy-pasted them and hand-placed them in groups all over the map, which worked out quite well anyways. I also don't know how to do 3D modeling, so I just stuck a bunch of objects randomly together and hoped that someone would replace it. But this wasn't the gambling that I was thinking of. I actually wanted real gambling. So I had the idea you could catch fish with different stats and then submit them into a race or a competition of some sort to earn coins as some kind of secondary or tertiary gameplay loop. I actually downloaded some fish models and then spent 10 minutes realizing what a massive undertaking it would be to create fish AI, and then I just shelved the idea instead. Now I'm already thinking about secondary and tertiary loops when you may be asking me, hey, you don't even have a primary gameplay loop yet, and you would be correct. So, I figured out how to create a grid to spawn some little resources randomly and more densely than the tanks. I came up with these 3 little resources for the player to find just by googling some random rock names. After that, I didn't quite know what they would be used for, so I let the idea just brew while I moved on, because what I think works so far is a combination of the atmosphere and gradually diving down deeper, finding these tiny little resources, not realizing how far under you actually have gone looking for them, and looking back into the void of darkness and seeing that the surface is so far above you now. In a previous game jam, I did quite well at implementing scary sound effects into one of my horror games to add to the atmosphere. So I wanted to bring some of that to the table, which led me to using my voice to create a terrifying sound effect that plays when you're swimming around at random times, hopefully catching some of the other developers off guard for a bit of fun. Which is great and all, but we still don't have a solid gameplay loop yet. We go get the resources, and then what? What can we do with them? The loop is missing the full circle and completion of cycle. So then I was just kind of like staring at these cubes, pondering, and then it sort of clicked. What if they were boats, and you could bring your resources back to them to sell? But the boats buy these resources off you at different prices, which is where the gambling aspect will come in. So 2 things can happen. First, it can just give you a flat rate all around, which is 3 coins for each type of resource you have, or it will offer you a high value and tell you what that is, but it will also have a secret low value and not tell you which one it is, with 5 coins being a high value and 1 being low. The 3 boats will randomly generate their offers at the beginning, so the player can have a look and see if they want to track down any resources in particular, since there is a hold limit of 15. Or if they don't, they can bring all their randomly found resources and take a big gamble on who they want to sell to. But not only that, I added this vendor here so the player can also take another gamble and exchange all of their resources into one. Now at this point, it isn't a completely fulfilling loop, but it is a loop. Swim off to the depths and find resources, don't drown, bring them back, sell them, gain coin, and repeat. And you've only got 6 minutes to do so. It's simple, but as I mentioned before, it actually feels quite absorbing, just going further and further under, and the atmosphere already contributes to that. But now all of this allows the other developers to sort of fill in the blanks and the spaces in between and figure out what to do with the coins that you gain. But I had just one last big idea for gambling. After getting the coins, it sort of clicked. I can make my fish gambling idea without catching fish. I created another vendor you can interact with. This time it brings up a menu with 4 different options you can choose from. A list of 20 odd fish names that I specially selected to place a bet on and input how much you want to wager. Once your bet is placed, the player can come back in 45 seconds to see the results, where second place will double your bet and first place will triple. Now, I'm completely aware this is not in tone with the rest of the game, as essentially just like a stupid joke that I came up with, but sometimes you just can't help yourself, so, whatever. And good luck to whatever happens to this. So I had a little bit of time to spare. I thought I would add some more of the sound effects I created using my mouth. I made some little treasure chests that you could find coins in that I had hand placed just like the tanks. And just like that, my 4 days were up. I actually feel really attached to what I've done, and it felt quite hard wrapping it up and sending it off. But I was confident in it, giving the following developers a good foundation to work with, hopefully. I wish I could have brought more in terms of visuals, but 3D modeling isn't something I've had a chance to fully indulge into yet. But I'm only the second dev, so it's a good start at least. Although I wish I could have at least put some sort of indicator to point back to the boats, because it's very easy to get lost, and I could only see the way back because of some temporary text that I put up. Also, I'd like to show this funny glitch that I hope someone in the future fixes, because I genuinely hope I didn't cause it somehow by just playing around. It seems that when the player glides against the ground, they quickly pick up extra momentum and continue flying in that direction, which also allows them to pass through the map. And with all that said, at this time of writing, I have not seen the completed project or anything yet, so now I just have to wait. But don't go away just yet, because by the time I've finished making this video when it's released, I will have seen it, so there will be a reaction at the end of the video. Alright, into the deep. Nice and simple. I like how it's expanded upon the atmosphere. Was what we originally set up. I'd love to know what that thing is. Yeah, the little raindrops are a really nice detail. They kept the fish gambling. I love it. It's great. And look at these amazing pieces of art. That's so awesome. I'm so happy they kept this. It's such a stupid idea. But I've got no coins. Flat rate. Oh, that's cool. Alright, so the trading system is still the same. There's just one boat. I like that. That's alright. Wow, I love... That sky's really awesome. I didn't really understand what to do. It was kind of vague. The UI's doubling up on itself. And I drowned. Alright, so it crashed. Or it bugged out and I had to quit. So we're going to try it again. That disappeared. Some of the things are kind of disappearing. The spooky sounds I made are still there. I just love all the environment detail that's been added. This is kind of like everything that I pictured, hoping that would be in it when I made it. You can still go really deep without realizing it. I like that. Voice notes. Alright. Oh. Can I listen to them anyway? No. Picked them up, but I didn't find anything. I don't know. So the tank system's changed. Now it just kind of resets back to full. Because before it used to swap them out to what you had before and what was in each tank. I think the oxygen tanks are reducing a lot slower because there seems to be a lot less urgency from when I set it up. Some 9 titanium. Ah, so now I've got the coins, but it's zeroed out everything else. Gotcha. That's a bug. And the offering I got disappeared as well. Oh, I can talk to him over here. 3. And nothing happened. I think maybe some of the dialogue clashes with the tone a bit. But I put in fish gambling, so I guess I can't comment on that. And I can't find much else. Alright, so I've been playing for about half an hour, and I haven't made much headway. I talked to the Wendigo, I found some of the resources, but I couldn't progress with any of the story. So I might just keep playing off camera and see how far I can get. But at this point it seems really buggy. I like that. I like the atmosphere, how that's carried forward. I like these UI elements, they're really awesome. I like all this environment detail, this underwater stuff, all the ships that they've dropped. But yeah, it just seems a little bit broken at the moment, and some of the systems have changed. I don't know if they're bugs or changes at this point, so I'm just going to keep playing off camera, off recording, and continue seeing what I think.
Hey man, what's up?
I need you to fix the game.
Oh, sure. You got 5 minutes?
So back to the Wizzard game again in the meantime. The development of this game is still ongoing, and at this time of writing there's been about 50 developers across 2 different videos, and it turns out I was the 21st developer. There was also drama about a hand and poop. That was pretty funny, but also no comment. Anyways, I've not seen or played the full game project because of this, but there have been some incredible additions to it so far. Even though I was the 21st developer, it was insane to see the entire scope so far, and everything everyone had done before me. It was also amazing to see that after 50 developers in, they kept and expanded upon the UI developments that I had created. So for now, you can go and check out the first 2 parts of the project on the Blackthornprod channel, and I can't wait to see the rest.
It's done.
So thanks to Reinhardt here, who was the last developer on the project, we managed to go through the game and fix all the bugs, putting it back into a playable state as intended in time for the audience to play. I did the best I could do to try and break it in any way possible and play test it while we fixed the bugs that I reported. And with the occlusion culling issue sorted, I was able to find all the story items and complete the game and see how it was intended to be played. And I loved it. Once again, the environment details being great. And saw all the objects and things decorating the underwater world, the rocks, the pillars, and the big megalodon statue, big sunken boats and other large structures. There were 3 different stories that you can approach, which was a lot of fun, and I just loved the whole Wendigo thing kind of ominously hanging over the map. I was actually quite surprised to see how much stuff was hidden in the game and the extensive amount of dialogue as well. There was just lots of secret new areas I kept finding every time I went to play it again. Even some little Easter eggs if you went looking for them. However, the changes to the tank system I'd created had me a bit torn. They no longer swapped out and they just added to your current oxygen level, so the gambling aspect was removed as the game evolved more towards exploring and the narrative story and a lot less focus on survival elements. But that's just the nature of it, and it's all part of the challenge. So in the end, I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I can't wait for everyone to play it. I just remembered I didn't even try this. So we're going to go for Tony Soprano over here, and we're going to bet all of it. Look how amazing this animation is. This is amazing. I love this. This is my favorite part now. 2nd place. Doubled my earnings. Once again, a big shout out to Reinhardt from the Constellation Creative. He actually reached out to me for the first time after the 100 Devs challenge last year, and we started talking from there. So it was actually quite the coincidence and pretty funny when we both found out we worked on the same project again without knowing. The Constellation Creative are currently working on a very cool looking cooking card game. Go give their channel a sub to check that out, and they have a pretty neat Discord channel if you want to go join that too. And thanks to Blackthornprod for these awesome opportunities. If you haven't seen the videos about these games, please go check them out over on their channel. And I'll probably link the game below in the description or something. So yeah, peace out.